Well, good morning and welcome to the DNP Project course, the fourth in your sequence of designing and developing your DNP project in order to transform health and well-being of the patients and the populations that you serve. So I'm delighted to take a few steps with you in your project journey this term. And we're going to spend a little bit of time today talking about your DNP manuscript as a story and how you can craft that story in a powerful and transformative way to improve the care of your patients and populations, but also to have it favorably and positively received by the journals and the reviewers that you submit it to. So as we begin to talk about storytelling, telling the story of your practice transformation journey with your manuscript, I'm going to be building on the narrative of the Three Little Pigs. So if that's unfamiliar or a foggy memory or an unfamiliar story, go ahead and listen to it before we talk about how to use it as a lens for understanding your DNP project. There's a link on the canvas, also here in the slide deck for you to hear it. And we're going to be beginning our time by talking about narrative before we get into the operations and the nuts and bolts of the course, because this concept of narrative is absolutely foundational for you as you frame your DNP manuscript. And the ancient Greeks gave us the great gift of a 5-part narrative structure for telling stories and dramas. And so I'm going to walk us through this insight from the ancient Greeks and then use it as a way to think about your doctoral project. So this 5-part narrative structure began with an exposition, a background, sort of a summary. How's life going in this space and time? And then there'd be a transition, a narrative hook, something that would grab your attention, pull you into the story so that you wouldn't want to leave the play or put the book down. Rather, it piqued your interest and got you engaged. So after that narrative hook, where they pull you into the story, the next thing would be the rising action, where your characters and your plot gets more and more complex. And you have conflict that needs to be worked out. That would peak at a climax where all of the characters and the plot and the story come together. It's the pinnacle of the storyline. And then you'd start with the falling action, where things begin to move toward resolution, and you'd reach that resolution point before finally you had a conclusion. Sort of, where does life go from here? How are things going to be better tomorrow because of what's happened in this story? And so you've got these 5 parts: the exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and conclusion. And you can see with this structure that there's actually a coherence, there's a narrative arc to the stories from the ancient Greeks. The exposition, the background, is what sets up the entire course of action, but the conclusion is explicitly built on this background. And so if you think about it conceptually, think about the story of the 3 little pigs. As you think about the story of the 3 little pigs, these 3 pigs are at home with their mother. Life is grand. But then the narrative hook is when the mother tells them they need to go and launch into the bigger, broader world and make homes of their own. And then the action begins to rise. The pigs, in sequence, build houses. You first get a house of straw, a house of sticks, and a house of brick. And the action gets even more complicated as the wolf shows up to challenge the pigs. He comes and blows on the house of straw, blows it down, and the pig runs then to the siblings' house of sticks. And the wolf comes there and blows on the house of sticks, knocks it down, so they run to the house of brick. And when the wolf then comes to attack the house of brick, the wolf is unable to get it to fall. So then you reach a climax where the wolf scales the brick house and climbs down to the chimney and falls into a boiling pot of water, is scalded, and then runs away. When the wolf runs away, then the pigs stay where they are. They share a house in common, And then at the conclusion, they have a peaceful place. And so this story begins, the exposition, the background is they're at home with their mother. The narrative hook comes where they're told to launch out and make their own homes. Then in the rising action, those homes are attacked by the wolf. In the falling action, the wolf is injured. The pigs stay, but instead of staying in 3 different homes, they stay in one home that they share as a peaceful place. So this concept of home and space and belonging is what's threaded throughout the narrative of the 3 little pigs. You can see there's a connection between the exposition, what the background story of the pigs living with their mother, the hook where they have to then go out into the world and make their homes, how those are attacked in the rising action, and in the conclusion, it's different than the 3 little pigs began. It's not they have the 3 individual homes, but they have one home as a peaceful place. And so that thread of home, threat to home, and then finally peace and well-being in a surprising new way follows this 5-part Greek literary structure. And so it's pretty memorable. You've either heard the 3 little pigs before, or if you listen to it this week for the first time, then you probably can remember 3 pigs, 3 houses, 3 attacks, wolf in the pot, runs away, and they all live happily ever after. And that's the power of this 5-part Greek structure, is it creates a storyline for us that's memorable and engaging. And that's exactly what you want to do as you craft your manuscript. You want to craft a narrative that is engaging for your audience, that hooks their attention and tells the story of the work you've done. So come back and we'll talk about how this ancient Greek structure, 5 parts, exposition, rising action with conflict, a climax, falling action, and then conclusion, is your roadmap for telling your DNP story. So come back for part 2.